All right, we are early on the Astro Weather tip by about 3 minutes. So maybe that buys me some credit in the future when I'm late for the stream for about 3 minutes. How was everybody? It really is just becoming marginally light here today, kind of a gray, overcast, early spring day. Feels a little like winter, but I know it's going to warm up. We're starting to head into our growing season here in Texas. The blue bonnets have bloomed and have graced us with their humble presence. It's a thing every year here in Texas when the blue bonnets sprout up along the highways, and people will get out of their cars and they'll lay down in the blue bonnets, and people take their pictures. It's a Texas thing. I don't think I've ever done it though. Not that I'm not opposed to it. If it, it's a tradition. It's a local tradition. And who am I to cast a judgment upon a local tradition? Not I. Although we did go to a town on Saturday. Never been to the town before, right? So decided to do a little search on the town. Like, so what is this town known for? It's called Junction. It's about an hour, maybe a little over an hour away. And you know what it's known for? It's known for a Christmas tree that they made out of deer horns, proudly displayed in the center of town. There you go. Junction, Texas, to your horned Christmas tree. All right, let's get into some Astro weather. I got a great star of the day for you guys today. I'm really excited about the star. I'm excited about the general cosmic atmosphere. Although, we did get into some really high strange with Pluto in Aquarius. I'm going to talk maybe about a little bit of a different angle with Pluto in Aquarius. And man, did it get weird yesterday with this shooting in Memphis. But I'm going to save that for a little bit later in the show. I hope everybody's having a great morning and you are finding your way through this this realm that we call life and earth and all that stuff. Did a show yesterday with the great Danny Katz, the Aquarian Aries rising Danny Katz. That'll be on her channel. And we get into the ADL, which was a very interesting deep dive. So a little push there for Danny's show. If you don't know Danny, she's a great follow on YouTube, by the way. All right, here we go. Mars has moved off 0 to 1 degree Cancer. We're still really at the beginning of this Mars cycle. And I don't know if anybody can feel a difference with the Mars shift. I could definitely feel a difference. And, one of the things that I think characterizes Mars and Cancer is something that I would call active empathy. And, Mars is action oriented, and Cancer is a sign that does express empathy. So Mars and Cancer is active empathy. It wants to engage in a way where emotional content is not pushed aside or stuffed. It's trying, when you get into the crab, you're trying to integrate. You're looking at the yin and the yang energy of the crab. So you're trying to integrate the emotional content. And so we're moving forward, right? Like we're moving forward out of this very prolonged Mars and Gemini period where, of course, Mars and Gemini went retrograde. And so everything that we learned during that period, we're supposed to integrate now emotionally. We have Mars, Gemini is a heady sign. And that's a kind of a big trajectory for us now, is to integrate what we understand on an emotional level and put it into action. And again, with Cancer, it's tricky. Cancer is not straightforward, right? Cancer moves sideways and goes backwards. But the trine with Saturn is interesting because the Saturn trine is buttressing Mars here. And I think adding some gravitas and strength around integrating your emotional content and putting it into action. Empathy in action, emotional content in action. We still have the inconjunct with Pluto. That's interesting. I mean, if I was to sit down on Sunday night and tell you that there was going to be a trans shooter on Monday, and it was the Pluto inconjunct with Mars, I'd be hailed an astrological genius. That said, I can see where we could make a case for that, because Pluto and Aquarius, here's the Pluto and Aquarius part. Pluto's death, right? I mean, it's a planet associated with death and the underworld and sex and obsession. And, you know the bullet points of Pluto. And in Aquarius, it's going to be definitely different, definitely odd, and this is the era with Pluto and Aquarius. This is the age of trans. And, it starts with, transgender, transsexual, and eventually it morphs into transhuman, which has always been a part of the arc, the sort of the biological cybernetic arc. So Pluto in Aquarius, I mean, can we make a case for people who indulge in violence and is death in this kind of strange Aquarian manifestation of the human? And then the inconjunct with Mars. And Mars in Cancer is really traditional. And I don't know the full story of what happened yesterday in Tennessee. I know a little bit of it. I know what the news has told me. I haven't done a deep dive because I was doing other things yesterday. But Mars in Cancer is very traditional. And the other thing with Mars in Cancer is you're dealing with masculine and feminine energies and trying to integrate them. And so when you have somebody who identifies as they, them, non-binary, and they go on a shooting rampage, we can begin to see this inconjunct take shape here. Now, they will never lose an opportunity or let a good crisis go to waste. Here we have this Mars square with Neptune, or crisis management, and everybody's running around and looking for perpetrators and victims, which is what our society has become quite good at. Instead of solving problems, we just look for perpetrators and victims. And that's on both sides of the political aisle, by the way. So we're looking for perpetrators and victims, scapegoats. Who did this? Why did this happen? How did this happen? Oh, it happened because this individual was feeling threatened. It happened because this individual was feeling as if they were marginalized. We're getting into that scapegoat energy again. We have the Mars Sun square, which is violent, right? That is violent. We get into Aries and we're into gun territory. This is another side of Aries in dealing with things that are connected to one's martial expression, included with guns included. So how does that look for the rest of the day? Well, you could just see how this Mars Neptune square, on the hunt for victims, on the hunt for scapegoats. And it's going to come up on places like that, because I think this is going to be different. The moon is in Gemini today. So they're going to kind of turn the tables, when these mass shootings take place and they don't fit the profile, or they don't fit the, hey, look at this. This is a lone gunman who's crazy and he fits this typical profile. Usually in this case would be white, right? They'll leave that alone. They'll go all in on that kind of a shooting because it fits an agenda. It fits a political narrative and agenda. And every single political regime here in the United States has a political agenda. And then they have a boogeyman. If you go back into the Bush administration, the boogeyman was Muslims, right? Pluto and Sagittarius. So I think today the narrative is going to be very different around this with the moon in Gemini. They're going to be looking at the reasons why this person did what they did. Now, again, supposedly this happened in a Christian school that this person used to attend. So that's another side of the story. And that's, Saturn in Pisces. And we're looking at the container and the sort of the foundational existence of religion, Saturn in Pisces is the priest, it's the minister, it's it's very orthodox in a lot of ways, Saturn in Pisces. So we see this now. We see this very interesting kind of conflict going on. With Sun Mars square, violence. People will be very, very on edge today, especially in the aftermath of this thing that happened. And then the Mars Neptune square, they're looking to find the blame, place the blame, put the pin the tail of blame on the donkey, which in this case might be Democrats. But I don't think that's necessarily true. So this is going to be an interesting day where there are energies that are vying for your attention. And if I had to take one over the other, it'd probably be the Sun-Mars square, because with at least the Sun-Mars square, there's a bit of a stake in the game, right? You can sink your teeth into it. If there's something that you have to go to the mat on, the Sun-Mars square is not a bad thing. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. With a Mars-Neptune square. Also, watch out who you defend today. That's the other thing. Watch out who you defend, and watch out for how far you want to push your rationalizations and how you kind of interface with reality with this Mars-Neptune square. Because I feel like if you push it too far, and you try to move the needle with certain people today, it's going to backfire. It will definitely backfire. So it's a really tricky kind of management piece on the emotional side with this Mars Neptune, because there are certain things you got to stand up for. Mars in Cancer is traditional. It wants to defend traditional values. So a Sun Mars square could absolutely slot right into defending those traditional values. The Mars Neptune squares, we're running around looking for blame. Who's gonna get the blame for this one? And the Moon in Gemini, of course, we're having to process all this emotionally, but it's Moon in Gemini is mental. You'll hear about this on talk shows. And my sense is that the party line is going to strangely be more sympathetic to the shooter. And this is a pattern now. I'm going to talk about this on my show at 9:11 a.m., 15 Minutes of Flame. We'll get into the shooting a bit more. And again, now, I think this is about the third, if I'm not mistaken, the third shooter that fits a very uneasy profile. We had one in Colorado. We had one in Tennessee. And I would even go so far as to look at the shooter in Illinois, that has just kind of gone beneath the radar, right under the radar, who very much looked like somebody who was in transition. So just keep an eye on how this is processed with the Moon in Gemini, and you'll just see this Mars Neptune, Mars Sun square get played out. And again, the in conjunct with Pluto, are we going to get an anti-gun message somehow through this? One of the things that I've talked about with Chiron is that the United States has Chiron at 20 Aries. So the United States is going to go through its Chiron return, which happens, of course, every 50 years. And I feel like when the United States goes through its Chiron return, and the United States has Chiron in Aries in the fourth house, that I think that the gun issue is going to become much, much bigger than it is. And I think the energies are ramping up here. And this is one of those days. So I think there's a fine line between defending and being defensive. And this is with the Moon in Gemini, you get to sort that out. Defending your position, defending your rights, defending your turf, defending your territory. But you don't want to bleed over into being defensive. And nobody likes people that are defensive. And sometimes it's one of those arts, mastering the art of defending your position without being defensive. A lot of people don't quite understand how to do that. And everybody gets turned off by somebody who's defensive. So how do you combat that? Well, the best defense is a good offense. And that's Chuck Norris, not me. All right, we still have the Aries parade, Sun in Aries, Chiron in Aries, Mercury in Aries, Jupiter in Aries, Vesta in Aries. A lot of Aries in the air. So there's no shortage here of energy that says, go do it, right? Go do it. Get it done. Get it done energy today. The challenge again is you don't want to get caught in, you don't want to spin your tires in mud with that Mars Neptune square. I know I say this every now and then on this stream, but today's the day where you want to pick your battles. Pick your battles. If you have to roll up your sleeves and, go to the mat with somebody, Mars Sun square, it's the energy for it, right? But pick your battles. Make sure if you're going to do that they're going to count. The old samurai wouldn't draw their swords unless they were going to kill somebody. I would say that energy's in the air, and it's just metaphorical. I'm not telling anybody to go kill anybody. Please, let's be on the record with that. But words cut. Words are like weapons. So choose your battles wisely today. We also have the moon moving into square with Neptune. That's another part of this victimization model. And what's interesting too is, Gemini represents early childhood education, preschool, basically Gemini is kind of like K through, I guess we can make it K through 12. Usually it's kind of like K through middle school, but we have such arrested development. We'll just go, K through 12 here. So this whole school thing is going to come up again. This is going to be one of those really weird, rare days where they'll take the narrative, which is not the company narrative, and they'll flip it. They'll flip it. Well, you can flip it too. That's the other thing with the moon in Gemini. Remember, these aspects are universal. And the moon in Gemini is real good at playing devil's advocate. And with all these sextiles to the moon, change things up a little bit. Don't be afraid to ask questions today. I think asking questions today is a really good strategy. If you ask the right questions, you might get some very, very interesting answers. So then you can, if you ask the right questions, you'll have information. And then with that Mars Sun square, you can unload on them. No, I'm just kidding. But today's one of those days, right? Mercury sextile the moon. Everybody's very curious. Lots of talking going on. Lots and lots of talking. It's my Monday today. So it feels like a Monday. But today would be like a Monday when you just get back to work and everybody's sitting around the cooler and talking about, what's happened over the last 24 hours, 48 hours. Very, very, very active communication day. Lots going on. So if you're in communication, if that's your gig, today is a great day to make as many contacts as possible. Many contacts. Today's actually a really good day to network, in my humble opinion. Venus and Uranus still hanging out here, having this strange relationship in Taurus. And it's interesting because when we think of Taurus, we don't think of Uranus. These are energies that I talked about a little bit of it. I actually talked about your Aquarius and Cancer. Taurus and Aquarius square one another. So today could be one of these days again where you're dealing with ennui or boredom in relationships. Like you want something new, you want something interesting, you want more stimulation with this Venus Uranus conjunction, and this is kind of hanging out there. And there's so much else going on in terms of these squares and the immediacy of the sextiles, that you may miss some opportunities with injecting some stimulation and some novelty into your relationship space. So pay attention. Somebody might be saying, hey, look, let's not do the same thing over and over again. Let's change things up a little bit here, whatever that is. And you're all consenting adults, and I'll leave you to decide what your strategies are. Okay, let's get into the star of the day. I'm excited about the star of the day. And there were some interesting people, I have to say. Lady Gaga is born today. Lady Gaga's birthday, but I didn't use Lady Gaga's chart because there are two charts for Lady Gaga, and I'm not a huge fan. And the person that I'm going to highlight today is way more interesting than Lady Gaga. Today's star of the day is Saint Teresa of Avila. Very interesting person. I remember when I first ran across her, it was in college, and I actually read her letters. There's a book that was actually, it was a book written about her. Some of her letters are in there, and this is the personification of a mystic, right? She was so in love with God that the love of God penetrated her heart in a way that, for all intents and purposes, sounds like a cosmic orgasm in the heart. And she was hard to handle for the Catholic Church because of her relationship with these deep, profound, mystical states. And she's a Pisces rising, and she has Venus at Pisces at that 29th degree, the final degree of the zodiac, the degree of the crucifixion, the degree that I think is most associated with this image and idea of Christ. And, she is in love with Christ, right? That's the whole idea. She is the Christ bride, and we can see Venus right here on the ascendant, and it's retrograde. But nonetheless, it's there. It wants to move back into the 12th house. All she wants is this, kind of sweet satisfaction of dwelling with the Lord in her soul, right? She wants to go back to God with Venus retrograde. South Node, Neptune conjunction in Aquarius in the 12th house. She's a mystic. She's a natural born mystic with Neptune in the 12th, but she's a different kind of mystic. She's not going to fit the patterns of church dogma and church order. They had a hard time with her. They couldn't put her in the box. The other thing with her is that she was very active. She was not a contemplative. So she went out and dealt with the world. And you can see all this Aries, Mercury in Aries, Sun in Aries, Uranus in Aries, kind of like today, except with the Uranus part, Vesta in Aries. So some of the qualities and elements that are in the sky today are in St. Teresa's chart. What's also interesting is the intercepted house with Aries in the first house, where the individual in some ways is eclipsed by this love of the divine, right? Just wanting to dissolve into everything. And then the second house of Taurus, which I think has a lot to do with this idea of, good works and being active. Here we see where I think she's problematic for the church is this Mars-Jupiter conjunction, especially in the third house. She communicated a lot, and so she had people that knew who she was and what her feelings about God and Christianity and mysticism were. And when we go to the other side of the chart, we see Saturn, and Saturn incredibly high here, the highest planet in the chart. To me, this is the representation of the church fathers, Saturn and Sagittarius. This is them kind of looking down at this Mars-Jupiter conjunction, which in some ways can be a little schizophrenic. Here's my guess on her is that she was probably a borderline epileptic. And I'm not going to just explain her mysticism away due to a medical condition, but epileptics definitely have this sort of chemical predisposition towards ecstatic or disruptive mystical states. And I think she has this. And the other thing here with Mars Jupiter, she's trying to navigate two worlds, maybe more than two worlds. She's trying to navigate the world of the church during that time. And she's also trying to navigate this other world, right? The world of rapture and love and God. So to me, this Mars conjunction with Jupiter and Gemini is very, very interesting in her chart. And Saturn, kind of looking down, and Pluto in Sag conjunct her midheaven. So you get a real sense of Pluto there. This is somebody who's going to change the landscape of the church for better or worse, right? I mean, that's how Pluto operates, and especially in Sagittarius. Now, what I found interesting was that her true note, now, this is a long time ago, right? This is 1515 in the Julian calendar. Of course, she has the moon in Virgo, which is purity. But if you look at the true note, it's conjunct Regulus. And so Leo is the heart, and we're going to talk about her heart in a second. Leo is the heart. And if you go back and look at what I believe to be the astrological birth chart of Yeshua, Sananda, aka Jesus, that chart has the true node in Leo conjunct Regulus. So here we go, right? It's basically in the same position of that chart. So what I want to do is I want to read a bit of a description here about Teresa and her ecstatic kind of moment, with God, right? So let me do this. Let me get into her Wikipedia page. And I know Wiki is kind of lame, but it's also, for certain things, it can be very helpful. So here we go. And this there's a story about her heart, which is really what I want to focus on here. Saint Teresa of Jesus, that was her other name. And we can just see that 29th degree and, the marriage of the Christ bride with Venus on the ascendant in Pisces. So she was canonized in 1622 by Pope Gregory. I want to get into this one. This is really the event. Around 1556, French suggested that her newfound knowledge could be diabolical or not of divine origin. See, that's the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, especially opposing Saturn. She began to inflict mortifications of the flesh upon herself, which was not uncommon. But her confessor, the Jesuit Francis Borgia, reassured her of the divine inspiration of her thoughts on that's Saturn, by the way, in Sagittarius. On St. Peter's Day, 1559, Teresa became firmly convinced that Jesus Christ had presented himself to her in bodily form though invisible. These visions lasted almost interruptedly for more than 2 years. Church doesn't like this. It's a woman, and she's having a full-on romantic, divine love connection with Jesus. This is what's happening. In another vision, the famous transverberation, a seraph drove the fiery point of a golden lance repeatedly through her heart, causing her an ineffable spiritual and bodily pain. And this is her account. I saw in his hand a long spear of gold. And at that point, there seemed to be a little fire. Now, remember, Aries and Sagittarius have this imagery of the spear and puncturing, and the heart is Leo and the wound of the heart. It's really interesting. He appeared to me to be thrusting it at times into my heart and to pierce my very entrails. When he drew it out, he seemed to draw them out also, and to leave me all on fire with a great love of God. The pain was so great that it made me moan, yet so surpassing was the sweetness of this excessive pain that I could not wish to be rid of it. I mean, to me, it sounds like she's having, I wouldn't say it's a Kundalini experience, but you could maybe infer that might be a description of this thing. That literally she was being penetrated by the fire of cosmic love. So when, of course, the famous story about her heart is that when they exhumed her, and the exhumation process was really weird. Really weird. I'm going to get into that a little bit. But they found that there was an indentation in her heart, and what appeared to look like scar tissue caused by something that would be very similar to a burn or a singe. It's really interesting. So here's the end game. She was buried at the Convento de la Annunciación in Alba de Tormes. 9 months later, after her death, the coffin was opened and her body was found to be intact, but the clothing had rotted. Before the body was reinterred, one of her hands was cut off, wrapped in a scarf, and sent to Avila. Gratian cut the little finger. So there's all this weird stuff. What had happened was that her coffin had not been sealed correctly. And they were amazed to find that after that time, she was still, for all intents and purposes, bodily fresh. Like she wasn't rotting, which is maybe had something to do with the earth and the humus of the earth, kind of creating this carbon shroud around her. But she was not displaying the signs of somebody whose flesh was rotting. And then we kind of see here, the cult of the relics. They started to cut off her body parts. Her right foot and part of her upper jaw went to Rome. Her hand went to Lisbon. Rhonda, Spain, got her left thigh and left hand. I mean, this is really brutal stuff. The Museum of the Church of the Annunciation, Alba de Tormes, got her left arm and heart. The Church of Our Lady of Loretto, Paris, France, got one finger. San Lucar de Barrameda got another finger. So they're dismembering her so that they can use her bodily parts as essentially spiritual totems. These kind of totems of the flesh that somehow carried the power of not just her spirit, but the spirit of God. It's really odd. I think it's odd, but on some level, I get it. And you can even see kind of the dismembering piece with all the Aries and the in conjunction in the first house, and Aries cutting and Aries cutting and Aries cutting, and these squares to Pluto. It's like, here's our good little mystic, who served and loved God so well that she was essentially betrothed to Jesus and had that love consummated, by the insertion of a fiery spear that pierced her heart, right? And they kind of turned her into a franchise. They turned her bodily parts into a franchise. Very interesting persona, and one worthy of the star of the day, St. Teresa of Avila. All right. If you want to join me on 15 Minutes of Flame, please do. We'll get into this high strange that happened in Tennessee. I believe it was Nashville. Let me give you the coordinates and the visual right there. Please join us there, 9:11 a.m., 10:41 a.m. Central Standard Time. We do it Tuesday through Thursday. I'm hoping to have a guest on today. We'll see how that goes. Normally I fly solo, but today feels like a guest day. The other thing too, if you are interested in CBD, I know a lot of you are. What I'd love to do is point you to the website of True Hemp Science, which is the partner of my show. And let me just go through here, and there you go. True Hemp Science. If you want to get some of the best CBD on the internet, dare I say on the planet, this is your source. And if you spend $100 or more and type in 15MINS, you get free product. Like right here, 19 right there. In fact, I'm going to take some after the show. So just type in 15MINS, $100 or more, get free product, $150 more, get free shipping, CBD. Great stuff. Enhances the quality of my life. It'll enhance the quality of yours. That's it. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to discern what's possible. Thanks for being here. Have a great day. Hopefully we'll see you over on 15 Minutes. Bye for now.